All right, hello everyone. Eric Marks, FindingMiddle-earth.com, and today I'm going to do another quick little post-processing tip here. And I thought this was a good photo to use it on because a lot of the detail and interest of this photo is in shadow. So let's go ahead and take a look at the photo, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I took this photo back in fall of last year. And this was at a park that just had some nice fall color starting to happen in the trees here. But the lighting wasn't really good. You know, it was obviously, as you can see, half of the water here was in shadow. And this was about an hour and a half before sunset. And I really wasn't supposed to be shooting from here. I was supposed to be shooting from down here, okay? At this little dirt area down here, shooting back at this big waterfall over here. But there was a drought where this was, a big drought, and there was no water, not even one drip of water coming off the waterfall. So I just kind of had to make it work, and I shot in this direction, and it was a decent shot. But I think the real seller to this image, especially for the foreground, being that there isn't a direct foreground, I think the real seller is the interest in this rock wall over here. There's a lot of good, three-dimensional details over here that we have to pull out. And so the tip today is going to be showing you the best way that I have found to pull those out. So okay, so let's get started. So first off, as you can see, I shot this in brackets. So I have my darker bracket on top, and my bottom bracket is my overexposed one so that I can get all that detail out, right? So you might think that the best way to do this is to go ahead and create a mask, right? Hit B on our keyboard for the brush, and essentially just take the opacity down and start painting back in some of that light, right? So there we go. Painting back in the shadow areas. Keep going with it, okay? Paint back in some of the water down here, and voila, right? That should be good to go. Well, that's what most people do, honestly, and that's what most people would think to do. But when you do that, you're just painting in light. You're not painting anything else. And so when you're brightening those really nice, dark details and some of the crevices in the rock wall over there, you're just brightening everything. You're making it flat. You're not actually, you're taking away from the contrast of the image. And so it's really taking this nice rock wall and making it bright and flat. It's not really making it attractive or helping the image at all. And I think this rock wall is beautiful. I think there could be a lot of detail in there that we can get out of this raw file, but I just can't, how do we do it, right? If we just keep brightening it up, it's just going to keep getting flatter and flatter until it just looks absolutely horrible, and then we're just kind of stuck. We don't know what to do. So let me show you what I would do here, okay? So let's go ahead and get rid of this mask. All right, go back to the first layer here. So I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this darker layer, all right? And I'm going to go to Filter. I'm going to go into my Nik collection. Go to Color Efex Pro, okay? So let me stop right here and tell you that the Nik collection is now free. So if you see me going into this and you're thinking, oh no, I don't have this software, go to google.com, I think /Nik, or just go to Google and type in Nik collection, and the whole Nik collection is free now for desktop. So you can get the whole collection. I think it used to be like $150. It's all free. So go get that, pause the video, and then come back when you have it and you can open it up here. So my favorite thing about the Nik collection, okay, is this filter called Pro Contrast, all right? And the reason why most times I don't lift my shadows as much as I could in Lightroom, whenever I go in, from Lightroom to Photoshop, a lot of people will boost their shadows so they can open up, some of the darker areas. The reason I don't do that is because I know that this one tool inside of Nik Collection Color Efex Pro really pumps the shadows while adding contrast. It's a brilliant tool. So let me show you. So it's called Pro Contrast. We're going to go and select that, okay? And we're going to go up here, and you want to basically mainly mess with the dynamic contrast. So let's add about 50% of that. All right, take it up. Now look what it's doing. Watch that rock wall. It's actually getting brighter, so the luminosity is there, but it's also getting, a little grittier and grungier, and it's retaining that contrast, and you can really see the gritty, crispy, clarity, contrasty goodness of this rock wall, which we want to retain. We don't want to just flatten it out like we did earlier when I was doing the layer mask. So as you can see that, look at that. That's really nice. So there's kind of a little trick that I've learned with Pro Contrast. If you go past the 60% mark, it starts introducing a lot of noise. So if you want more than this, you can actually add a secondary filter. You can hit it with Pro Contrast again and just take it up another 20 or 30%, something like that. So let's do that. 35. Okay, so that way we've really added about 95% of Pro Contrast, but we haven't taken the contrast slider past 60% on either one, which I think the other one was 60 something. Let me see. Let me make sure. So the other one I had it at, about 60%. Okay, so we've really done about 95% of Pro Contrast here, but we have not exceeded the actual slider of 60%, because when you do that, it starts getting really, really noisy, even in the rocks here. Now, Pro Contrast can tend to add a lot of noise to the sky and to trees as well, and especially really dark areas. And so we're just going to selectively add this back in. All right, so there we go. We're good there. So let's go ahead and hit OK. All right, now that we've done our Pro Contrast, and we'll let this load in. And one cool thing about Nik Collection is it processes everything from Nik Collection back into Photoshop into a brand new layer of Nik Collection. So really, I didn't have to duplicate that layer a minute ago. So we're just waiting on it to process, and then we can get into how I would add this back into the wall in a very subtle and complementary way for the image. Okay, so added back in here. So this is the Nik Collection layer where it's added into the entire image. Now we don't want that because it actually adds a lot of gross haloing to the tops of the trees, and it adds a lot of noise into the clouds in the sky. So I just want it mainly here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold Option and add a mask. So that's going to give me basically an invisible mask, right? It's going to hide everything. And then I'm going to hit B on my keyboard, make sure I'm painting with white, and I'm going to start revealing it. But there's an important step here, okay? You can use a mouse to do this. I always use my Wacom tablet because you have pressure sensitivity on these paint brushes, okay? And so you can actually just very lightly add in the details where you want to, and then you can press down harder and you get more of the effect in certain areas, because that's what I want to do to kind of play around with the lighting here. So I'm going to make sure my flow is really low. See, so it's around like 10%, and the opacity will make it around like 45. Okay, and let's zoom in to this rock wall here. Let me move over. Okay, so before we start painting, this is one thing that I urge you to look at in your photos, okay? Always pay attention to the characteristics of the light. Where is the light hitting in your photo, right? Can you see, obviously there's a big strong line right here where the light is being cut off by the edge of the mountain. But here you can see there's still bits of light, you know, kind of just being kissed right here, right? In this part of the rock, maybe a little bit right here. And then you can obviously tell what's in direct shadow. And then maybe this little rock down here. And so we want to accent that, okay? We want to really kind of, we're almost going to use this tool kind of like a dodge and burn. And the only reason we're using this tool as kind of a dodge and burn tool in this situation is because this has really detailed areas that we want to bring out. So we don't just want to adjust the luminosity, we want to also adjust the detail. So let's paint here, okay? Let's paint really lightly on here, and you can see how that's just very subtly coming back through. See how nice that is, and just how just a super soft, big brush, okay? And we'll paint a little bit down here, and I'll make the brush a little smaller, and I'll kind of target that rock a little bit, because that rock was already being kissed by some light really nicely. So was this green area down here, this little foliage area. Just paint a little bit of extra light on that. Make the brush bigger again. Cover some of this, maybe some of the back of the tree line up here, but not too much on the trees. All right, so we just want to blend it in nicely. So there's that. Okay, and then we'll add some extra bits of light right here, because I think the light was really kind of kissing this direct area right here. It was very directional, the way it was kind of spilling off of the trees, you know, up here onto the rocks. And then we'll add some more in here. Okay. And then we'll just leave some of this other stuff, we'll just lightly paint here, because we don't want too much light, too much detail there. We want some of that to remain very three-dimensional. We want to keep some of the blacks in that area. Okay. So after I'm done with this, all right, what I'll typically do is, and let's get some of the water down here too, because the water is almost completely black. Let's lift up some of the detail down here. All right, that's looking good. So we don't want too much. Again, this is, you know, I don't want the eye to be drawn straight to the bottom left corner. I'm just saying I just want this to be subtle enough to where people know it's there and that it's very interesting to look at. Because obviously that's part of my composition, so I want it to make sense. So let's get closer in here. Okay, and so now that I'm done with this, there's a couple of little things I like to do. I'll hit X on my keyboard, okay? And X will just basically go back to the invisible mask, and it'll go back to the, it will hide everything that I've just done. So I'm basically going to unpaint the stuff I did. I'll unpaint that Pro Contrast layer in some of these little nooks and crannies here, okay? To make it more three-dimensional. I want the blacks to stand out more here. So see how I'm making this darker? Right here. I'm just adding more dimension to it. Right here, right in the little crevice there. I'm just going to paint more black. All right, I'm going to keep going there. Right here, I'll paint some more black. Okay, and just target some of these, you know, just little cracks and crevices and little overhangs where they're overlapping the rocks. Just really make some of the blacks stand out. That's one of the things you want to make sure, is that contrast is all about the difference in between whites and blacks, essentially, right? So we have to make sure that that's added in a very complementary way to the composition as well, because we don't want it to look, you know, weird and fake, but at the same time, when this gets printed, I want it to look really poppy. I want it to just pop right off the paper. So I'm just going to really work on these little corners and crevices here. All right. Just keep painting. I'll definitely do some down here. There's a big shadowy area down here. Okay, we'll really accentuate the blacks down here because I don't really care if there's much detail under there. There wasn't much there to begin with. All right, we'll keep working this area. Okay, so we'll do some up here. All right, so again, like I said, I'm essentially using this as kind of a dodge and burn layer, even though it's not really dodge and burn. It's just kind of adding and taking away detail. But I think it works quite nicely for this image. Okay, so let's just take a look at a before and after there, all right? That's before and after. Now that's so subtle, right, as far as you can't see like a direct line where I've been painting, but if I were to just leave it on, you would have never known that I did all of this. Now we can even adjust the opacity and blend it in just a little more if we wanted to. And so we can even adjust the opacity like this so that we kind of blend it in. And then we can go back to our white brush and, you know, target the brighter areas a little more. So we can add a little more brightness there, a little more brightness in here. All right. Just, you know, specific areas we can use this just to really, really make these highlighted areas stand out. And I mean, I could spend, and have spent, I've spent, you know, half an hour just doing this to one little area before, and it gets really addicting. It's fun because you're actually bending the light, you know, to your will. You're taking all the light that's there in the raw file, and you've become this painter, and you can just choose where you want to take the light and the detail, and you can just literally just have these natural brush strokes and add it right into your photo. So I'm not going to work any further on this because this is just kind of for example, but I think that looks pretty darn good. You know, obviously this is all, you know, pre-production. I haven't done any post-processing on the rest of the image yet, but starting on that little area, I think that looks really good. There's a lot of dimension there now. The mountain definitely pops a lot more than it did when we were looking at the original, which is this, which is, you know, flat. And there you go. So it's much better to just bring detail to an area instead of just luminosity. If you just brighten things, it doesn't really reveal detail, it just flattens everything. It reveals the subject, but it doesn't reveal detail. So keep in mind that as you brighten things in images, you lose contrast. So it's important to equally brighten and take the contrast up there with it. They need to kind of be parallel, so that way you don't lose the contrast. Contrast is one of the most important things in images. It's really contrast, and the way light plays off of contrast actually controls how the viewer's eye makes its way through your image. So if you have poor contrast, it might confuse the viewer and they'll just go on to the next image. So yeah, I hope this helps. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Just leave them in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. If you would like to stay up to date on all of my latest photography videos and adventures, click the big subscribe button below. And if you would like to find out more about me and how to become a great photographer, visit my website at findingmiddleearth.com.